Hey everyone, Danox Harrison here and welcome to the High-ELO tier list for patch 10.24 from Mobalytics. And it's been a while since we've done a High-ELO tier list. We've had a lot of in-depth discussion with our Challenger tier list team over the course of the preseason, so we're confident we've got a strong grasp on what's currently performing on this patch. As it's been a while since the last High-ELO video, the changes shown will only reflect shifts since 10.23, not since the last video, so we're going to highlight some key features for each role to talk about our experts' views on what is performing well, just to make sure you're filled in on what the current state of the meta is right now. So first up, we're going to take a look at top lane, and in the God tier we have Camille, Shen and Malphite, and in the S tier we have Maokai, Kayle and Poppy. Now, tanks are still performing solidly in the top lane despite the series of nerfs applied to the Bami Cinder items. There are particular tanks who were already solid picks before preseason, and they've been the biggest benefactors since the changes. Overall, top lane has been a bit of a mixed bag as people have been trying different item options. The biggest shift was a loss of Tiamat having both the active and the passive effects, which was a really powerful tool and great early rush option for a lot of champions looking to control waves and consistently hold priority. For high-elo players, this was a massive shift, which definitely hurt a lot of champions relying on it. Iron Spike Whip has been a solid substitute for champions who build Gore Drinker or Stride Breaker, and our top expert Shikari did say that he felt Stride Breaker was underrated to a degree, as it was for the most part overlooked for other mythics. Now specifically in terms of changes for this patch, we've seen attempts to knock Kayle down, but she's still in a really solid spot. She's able to handle most matchups capably, because as long as you don't lose the game before she gets some items and levels, she'll become very relevant later in the game. Jax has risen up, partially just due to the fact that he's one of the few champions who can respond to Camille, who's firmly in the top spot for the role. Rengar and Akali are seeing success for players who are adept at handling them. Akali was a bit of a bounce back as she was performing really strong after the new items, and although it was anticipated the AP item nerfs would hit her off, she's managed to shake them off, whereas for Rengar, it's the emergence of a bruiser build utilising Iron Spike Whip into Gore Drinker. Now Vayne has flown back on the list. The huge Kraken Slayer and Phantom Dancer buffs mean she's in a much better spot, specifically when picked into solid matchups for her. Shield Bow is still an option when she needs the lifesteal and shield, but regardless of the build, she is still very much a counter pick. And Olaf has had solid success as a lane bully who doesn't fall off nearly as badly as he used to, as Gore Drinker syncs super well with his kit and he's able to boost the healing from it with his W, and the extra AD at low HP makes him super threatening in the mid game. Now, moving on to our highlighted picks, first up is Camille. Camille is arguably the best top laner in the game when wielded by a skilled player. A lot of her bad matchups are really suffering. You may remember the Nuguri Renekton whacking Camille meme, but unfortunately for the Crocodile, he's in no state to be doing any of that. Camille is capable of mitigating these hard matchups thanks to the power of Grasp in tandem with the shield and the mobility of Hookshot to keep her safe from ganks. Her late game is as devastating as ever, able to decimate the side lane or isolate key targets in teamfights and quickly dispatch them. By this point, with how staple Camille has been in the meta for such a long time, any strong top laner should be proficient with the champion and look to capitalize on it when given the opportunity. Next is Shen, and as far as tanks go, he is by far the best. He can hold his own against most bruisers and fighters thanks to his powerful trading tools like his W to block autos and his passive shield, but even against tanks, the percentage HP damage at his Q means he can win those matchups convincingly. It goes without saying that Shen's ult is a super powerful tool in terms of map pressure and even for following engages from your teammates, but it's really the icing on the cake, as the rest of Shen's kit is ample to put him in a powerful spot. Shen's only major difficulty is range matchups, and most AP champions he can withstand the harass until he's tanky enough to brush their damage off. I will say however that some ranged ADs can cause him issues, but a couple of jungle ganks following a flash taunt will put him in a good position in the lane. Just be aware, if you end up in lane against a Vayne, it may not be such a fun time. Now last on the list is Malphite, and he is in such a good spot at the moment, able to utilize the sheer power of Sunfire to augment his already powerful kit. Currently, in terms of early laning, you can either go Grasp into melee matchups or Comet into range matchups to help your early trading. Between Corrupting Potion and Biscuits, you're more than capable of finding your way through the early levels, and then come 6, your lane opponent has to be super afraid of jungle ganks as you have great setup or even just solo kills, as Malphite has a considerable amount of damage and the knockup from his ult allows for easy capitalization if you get your opponent low. Malphite's big strength is being rock solid. You're super tanky, and the sheer power of your ultimate is always going to be relevant, unless you're missing it. Immobile champions are in a really tough spot when flashless, and even mobile champions have to reserve the mobility to try and dodge away. You have the option to look for aggressive engages or flanks, or even just hold the ultimate and force the enemy team to consistently respect it and as a result never be able to commit to a team fight. There are definitely champions who outscale in the side lane that you should be concerned about, and he can be a little vulnerable to lane bullies who are looking to find all-ins, but as long as you're able to group and force team fights, you're going to be finding value in the champion. Now moving over the jungle, in the God tier we have Nunu, Kayn and Graves, and in the S tier we have Kha'Zix, Hecarim, Skarner and Sejuani. Now jungle has steadily seen a shift away from the initial tank domination we saw thanks to Sunfire. There's still a few holding strong, but the likes of Zac, Amumu and Mundo have fallen significantly as a result. Olaf has been doing pretty well. Similar to top lane, Goredrinker is a great option for him to boost his survivability while outputting solid damage. On top of that, Iron Spike Whip is a great early skirmishing tool to add a bit of extra burst and also helps out with your clear. Rek'Sai has actually seen some solid success for the first time in a while. Ever since the heavier farming junglers took the reins, he's struggled to find headway. By building Prowler's Claw, you spike super hard as you can use the active while still underground and burrowed to help you gap close for your knockup. Couple that with the lethality making you a bursty assassin who doesn't fall off quite so quick, and is a good pick if you're looking to find strong ganks and pressure the map early. Still not stellar, but definitely better than he was before. Now Udyr is a champion who's been performing well and is bordering on pushing up to S tier. Sunfire into Lichbane has been the build, and thanks to a High-ELO one trick on EUS showing the strength of the champion, there have been a range of adopters and it's had pretty good results. Now onto the highlight picks. Nunu is dominant at every ELO range, and the fact that a relatively simple champion is still performing so well at higher ranks shows how strong he is. The best tank by a solid margin after the Amumu nerfs, Nunu is ridiculously frustrating to deal with as he has great ganks with the snowball, solid objective control with his Q, consume, and his clear speed is pretty good as well thanks to his passive, particularly once you grab Bami's Cinder. Nunu is frustrating to play against, and in tandem with Phase Rush it's super hard to get away from him. Once he's chasing you down with snowball, there are limited options if you don't have a dash or flash. I think ultimately Nunu is so strong because he's so versatile and has limited weaknesses. As long as you have your carries to provide the DPS, then you'll be able to soak damage and zone control your way to victory. Kayn is really ridiculous right now. Goredrinker syncs super well with his red form and he becomes incredibly difficult to kill. Iron Spike Whip is a great early item to help speed up his clears, and in honesty the stronger junglers at the moment just aren't really enough of a threat to him in the early levels. As long as you're getting your form in a reasonable time frame, then you become a massive issue for the enemy team. Both red and blue are viable, and it really comes down partially to comfort but also on the enemy's team composition. Two or more tankier champs and red is comfortable, but if it's a team of squishies, blue form is a great option just to decimate them. His skirmishing is still solid pre-form though. Big changes came in around patch 10.10, which gave him a buffed slow on his W to 90% and reduced his Q cooldown, which really helped him out. However, I will say it's taken these new items to firmly put him in such a good spot. Historically, Kayn has been a bit feast or famine because of the reliance on fighting to get your form earlier, but being weaker without it. This is why it's so significant that he's performing so well. Shutting down Kayn is mandatory, but it's not proving to be very successful, and particularly the tanks in the jungle will just give Red Kayn a free full heal in team fights. Definitely a ban-worthy champion at the moment. Finally, for the jungle, we're taking a look at Graves. For a short period of time, it looked like he wasn't going to hit the ground running in the preseason, but after a little stumble, he's doing really well. Lethality just makes him so bursty and able to put so much damage out. Particularly Eclipse gives him an insane amount of dueling power with the shield, the movement speed, the damage, and the Omni Vamp. Yeah, no wonder that I am so good even after the nerfs. Collector as well is super powerful with him. Crit and lethality allow him to hit like a truck, and the execute is just the icing on the cake. Graves is still excelling at what he did well prior to the preseason, strong skirmishing, great clear, and able to scale well into the later stages as a powerful consistent damage threat. A big reason why he's doing so well is because his rougher matchups like Nidalee aren't doing so hot at the moment. Similar to how Camille is smashing the top lane, if you thin out a strong champion's counters, they're only going to get stronger. Now onto the mid lane. In the God tier we have Akali, Galio and Echo, and in the S tier we have Fizz, Annie, Kayle, Victor and Katarina. Honestly, mid lane didn't shift as much as was anticipated with the huge amount of AP mythic nerfs. I think overall the champions who are performing well are still able to do so, and a few have found the ability to shift to different mythics. We've definitely seen some edge cases be brought down a few levels, but not enough to stop them from holding up in S tier. I'd say the biggest hit was the Liandry's and Demonic Embrace combo both getting nerfed. As a result, Malzahar's dropped down to A tier, and Brand, who's on the cusp of S tier, is not moving up anytime soon. Two champs which have emerged with new interesting builds are Castan and Aurelion Sol. Castan has been going a burst tier build with Electrocute and Luden's allowing you to spike sooner in the game, although your late game isn't as good as the preseason Castan who would ult 16 times in a row and brush off any damage. This build has found him decent success after an initial worry that the loss of the shield on Seraphs and Rod of Ages being gone, and also Presence of Mind no longer given flat mana, would make him unplayable. Now for Aurelion Sol, he's been combining Rylai's with Imperial Mandate, allowing him to proc Mandate on each of his star hits for an extra 60 to 100 damage. It gives him a huge spike mid game, and not only does his damage get amplified heavily, but in skirmishes your allies can proc your Mandate damage to dish out even more. Aurelion Sol isn't a champion played by many people outside of One-Tricks, but if you have some experience with him, then now is the time to dust off the Cosmic Space Dragon and pick him up again. Be quick though, likely we will see this interaction nerfed next patch. Another champion who has been trying Mandate is Victor. After the W upgrade, all your abilities except your ultimate slow, so you can easily apply the Mandate consistently. Victor wasn't exactly struggling in the meta or looking for builds, but this is a powerful option for a faster spike in the mid game, but expect your late game to be a little bit weaker. Now one final little tidbit on the builds for mid laners, we have seen Katarina move towards this AD build where she actually rushes Blade of the Rune King. Since you now apply on her effects with your ultimate, with your dagger pickup, with your E, and as well as the fact she has decent AD scaling, she's been performing really well by going this setup. Onto the highlighted champs for mid lane, and first up is Akali. She has been smashing games. Riftmaker has replaced Gunblade, and although that isn't that active for the burst, the Omnivamp is still there, and the percentage bonus damage means it's almost like you're getting the best part of all Liandry's on your first item. Zhonya's is cheaper, Demonic Embrace is a great AP bruiser item, and Lichbane is a strong burst option. Akali is benefiting massively from this range of strong item options, and for those who can pilot her well, she's a devastating force once again. The same issues arise when trying to face Akali. She's hard to pin down, has a ton of burst damage, and is honestly just really annoying to kill. Definitely a mechanical challenge to be playing Akali as well as the likes of Caps, but if you're feeling confident and want to hard carry a game, then Akali is definitely the champ for you. I'm a little bit sick of seeing Galio up here, but for the time being he's unlikely to shift without some big nerfs. Predator and Rocket Belt are a great combination for him, allowing you to glide into teamfights at max speed and find easy taunts. Ultimately, Galio's biggest issue is him relying on his allies to engage so he can follow this up. This amount of movement speed allows him to dictate engages himself. Couple that with his great wave clear and roaming potential, and it's an easy setup to take over a map and make the game revolve around him. I think a big factor as well is Galio manages to retain relevance really deep into the game. There are definitely champions who outscale him, but as long as you're capable of finding access to squishies, you're able to layer your CC and then burst them. A fed Galio is super scary to play against, especially if he does have primary engage. The likes of Maokai, Camille in the top lane are great for setting up his ultimate to squash your opponents. Last for mid lane is Echo, and this was actually a tough choice between him and Fizz, but both champs function similarly to an extent and are both performing really well. Echo snowballs like crazy, and there's limited counterplay due to his mobility, stun and ultimate to get out of tricky situations. His burst damage becomes really insane when fed, and Lichbane is a great item to compound that. Skirmishing is something he really excels at, and to an extent he can kind of mirror Galio in the sense that you can push mid and look to roam to your side lanes to find opportunities to feast on overextending opponents. I'd say Echo does struggle a fair bit in teamfights if you're facing a lot of lockdown and hard CC, but as long as you're patient when waiting out cooldowns, you'll still be able to make an impact. Now on to the bottom lane. And at God tier we have Jhin by himself, and the S tier we have Misfortune, Vayne, Kai'Sa and Samira. Now ADC's seen a bit of a shift up with Kraken Slayer and Phantom Dancer being buffed, so we've seen a few rise up as a result. Aphelios, although still not running with the highest win rate, is performing decently in the right hands. Tristana is utilising Kraken Slayer to solid success, and both Kai'Sa and Vayne have managed to take spots in S tier. We did see Swain and Victor drop down from S tier just due to the AP item nerfs making them not as powerful compared to the AD carries, and also Ashe has been bumped off S tier for the first time in a while after just struggling to really have a powerful build. Kraken Slayer just doesn't sync super well with her kit, and Shield Bow / Gale Force result in her lacking damage to cut through tankier opponents. We did see Samira take some heavy nerfs, and she's just ever so slightly holding on to S tier right now, but she's definitely feeling the hurt from those. Now first up, we're taking a look at Jhin. Now he's been smashing it at every elo, and at the higher ranks he is really popping off. Eclipse gives him a great early lethality spike, and the Collector is so good with his kit. He's easily capable of 4th shotting to find the execute, and it can apply on his ult as well. Another thing which is overlooked is the Collector is great with his dancing grenade, and actually works on minions as well, allowing him to just Q the casters in the mid game and one-shot them all. Now Jhin is the only AD carry in God tier, and it honestly is ban worthy at the moment. His laning is great, and he just outperforms every other champ in his role. It feels like at any point in the game you're capable of just destroying squishier champs in 2 to 3 autos, and the percentage penetration from Eclipse helps to mitigate his usual weaknesses into tanks. If you're not playing Jhin when you get the chance, then you're missing out. And if you wanted to match up Jhin with a strong lane partner for your duo, then I'd recommend playing Nami together with them. Imperial Mandate on Nami in combination with her E really helps to bolster her AD carry's damage, and Jhin can apply it with not only his autos but his W and ult as well to steamroll any champion in front of you. Kai'Sa has actually started to look really solid on this patch. Kraken Slayer into Runans has been doing really well, and thanks to the AD on Runans, you're able to get your Q and E upgrades with both of them combined with the Berserker's Greaves. W Evolve is being prioritized a lot less, but Nash's is still an option if you want to pursue it. For the most part though, it's more about the AD damage output, as you're able to use your attack speed steroid to quickly stack Kraken Slayer and your passive and just shred through targets. Hail of Blades allows you to get that burst off really fast, and with Ravenous now being Omnivamp, you can combine that with Legend Bloodline for some solid sustain to help you out in duels. Kai'Sa is always going to perform better when paired with a support who has hard CC. Now Nautilus has always been the sort of go-to option, but Leona is really strong in the current meta, so I would definitely recommend pairing them up if you get the chance. Post 6, you're easily able to find all-ins and blow the enemy AD carry up. Now, Kraken Slayer was a little weak coming into preseason, so much though that Vayne was preferring Shield Bow despite how well Kraken Slayer syncs with her kit. After some massive buffs on this patch, she's now feeling comfortable to pick it up, and her damage is really significant. One of the big changes from preseason was having lifesteal applied to on-hit damage, which is perfect for Vayne. Ginsu's is a great option to convert your crit, which doesn't work with the Q bonus damage, into on-hit and really just bolster your consistent output in a fight. Vayne is always going to be a monster in the later stages, but thanks to Ginsu's no longer needing to stack and the extra attack speed offered by Kraken Slayer, you can easily start to shred from the mid game on your 2-item spike. It was definitely still rough lane matchups for Vayne, but that's nothing new, and as long as you're confident navigating them, you'll be able to 1v9 as you'd hope. In terms of lane partners, Lulu has been rising up in prevalence and is great for buffing Vayne to do more Vayne things. Now, finally going down the support lane, who honestly they've been doing pretty well this patch overall in terms of syncing up with their mythics. First up in the God tier we have Leona by herself, and then the S tier we have Nami, Maokai, Janna, Lulu, Alistar, Galio, Bard and Thresh. Quite a lot of them who are all performing really solidly. Now support has seen a decent amount of changes. Imperial Mandate is being realized as really powerful, so the biggest abusers have started to rise up in the form of Nami, Lulu and Bard. We've also seen changes to Moonstone Renewer, and that's given Yuumi the window to climb some ranks. She's actually able to proc it super consistently thanks to her W actually counting as affecting a champion with an ability, and I've seen Yuumi's be able to reach ridiculous amounts of healing with this item. And if you're playing it yourself, or if there's a Yuumi in your game, then mouse over it and you'll undoubtedly be shocked and probably a little bit disgusted with the number it shows. Now, moving on to our highlights, Leona is still in the top spot. She's just super powerful at finding all lanes, and honestly, a lot of the other champions in S tier really struggle against her. Her burst damage is huge, and the short cooldown of Q makes her really hard to deal with in a skirmish. Locket is a great tool to strengthen your ally's survivability, and the active shield is actually pretty monstrous, so be sure to find a critical time to use it. If you're a fan of stomping enchanters into the ground, then Leona is definitely the champion for you. Now, I highlighted earlier how Kai'Sa goes well with Leona, but honestly any aggro AD carry does the job well, and undoubtedly Jhin is the best just with how strong he is. I'd say the only really rough matchup for Leona at the moment is Braum, but in honesty you can just look to outrun him and find opportunities outside the lane. Bard has always been a solo queue monster at higher elo, and with Imperial Mandate he's found a great item to make his skirmishing even better. All the great Bard strengths still apply, the playmaking potential, the roaming power and the damage output. Mandate, however, really helps to bolster your damage earlier in the game, because as soon as you get it, you're getting that extra bit of damage which applies on everything except your portal, obviously, and with allies able to proc the damage, you can quickly rack up the numbers and help hard win skirmishes. Bard particularly excels when he has an AD carry who can play safe and a jungler who can snowball hard. A big factor in higher elo games is support's ability to pair up with their jungler to look for two-man gangster invades and find number advantages on the map. Just be aware of the lane stay bot lane. If your wave is frozen in front of the enemy tower, then your AD carry will be crucified, so you need to pick your windows carefully. Now, Nami is my go-to solo queue pick at the moment, and she's syncing so well with Imperial Mandate. By far the best abuser, as you can apply it 3 times with one use of your E. The damage output starts to become insane, as even without proccing the Imperial Mandate, the upfront damage is around 180 in the mid game. I played Nami with Jhin, Ezreal and various other ADs, and each time they're hitting like a truck thanks to that bonus output. Nami is vulnerable in lane, especially versus things like Leona and Thresh, and she's also hard to master, as landing consistent bubbles isn't the easiest, but as long as you can navigate the harder aspects of the game, then you can get huge value from just buffing your teammates so they can decimate. I also have some tech for Nami that isn't featured on the build here, but it's something I found huge success with and I'd recommend you to try. Sorcerer Shoes on Nami. So hear me out, the damage from your E and Mandate counts as your own damage, so is affected by your own magic penetration. And by taking Sorcerers, it hits a fair bit harder, and simply because of Imperial Mandate, you're doing enough damage to justify this choice. The alternative of Ionians is fine, but you're not really hurting for CDR with this build, so I'd encourage you to give it a go, and let me know what you think in the comments. Now that wraps things up for the 1024 high-low tier list. I can only apologise it took so long for one of these, but there's been a lot to get to grips with over the course of the preseason, and ultimately the choice was made to help prioritise the lower elo players with regards to these videos, as we felt they'd need more help to decipher the new items and what impact they'd have. I hope this has been informative, and if you want to keep updated on our tier list videos and other content, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.